And if you are just coming in from the waiting room, welcome. And you'll see that we are doing a very quick poll here just to learn more about our participants today and what your role is in the community.
Like me to stop the poll at read time?
Sure.
And these are the results.
So our strongest group by just a few points is our family and youth peer support providers. It's wonderful to have everyone here, and thanks to all of you for helping us with this poll. And Nicole, did you have another question we wanted to do? Is that it?
That's it.
Great. Okay. All right.
My screen, it seemed to have paused. Give me 1 second.
If you can see it, Nicole, there is a second question. If not, that's all right.
Everybody can see my screen? Okay. Yeah, I don't see, let me see something. I don't see the second
No
question.
worries at all. Okay, no worries at all.
All right.
All right, so let us move forward. Guys, we know that one of the cornerstones of our conference every year is all of us getting together. We learn wonderful things. We have fabulous presenters, but all of us being in one space at one time is huge. And this year has been a year that it would have been a good thing to have been able to do that, wouldn't it? I know we have all been through all kinds of experiences this year. It's been tough, but we wanted to put this slide up to do a virtual hug to everybody. These are pictures from conferences past, and we wanted each and every one of you to know that we are sending you virtual hugs. And next year, let's hope we'll all be in Chicago where we can actually be together again. Next slide, please. Let me do a shout out and a thanks to all of our sponsors. We had such generous sponsors this year, and we appreciate each and every one of you who sponsored this conference. I know we put it together at some part of a late date, but you guys came through, and we thank you so much for that. Next slide. Now I must confess, you guys know I try to be honest with you all the time. So when the idea for this conference came up, it did not come from me. It came from one of our board members, Diana Auten. And I must say, I said, oh my goodness, are we really going to try to do this? And our board said, we are. You just sit back and relax. We know you're working on some other things. We're going to make this conference happen. So I want to send a huge shout out to my board, each and every one of them, for the incredible job that you've done in pulling this conference together. I cannot imagine how this would have happened otherwise. I can't imagine anyone who has a better board anywhere in the country. Thank you guys so, so much for making this happen. Next slide. And to our organizers. Our board had wonderful ideas. They were so supportive, but these two ladies have worked tirelessly to make this conference happen. Nicole has been working dusk to dawn on this and has really done a fabulous job. I know you guys have heard from her many times. Kelsey has been working so hard on making sure you have the most beautiful graphics that we could put together, and working on the logistical piece of this. So thanks to both of you. We wouldn't be here if you weren't doing this. So thank you so much for your help. Next slide. All right, so I've got a couple of announcements to make. And this first one, I want us to talk about just a minute. I know I don't have long here, but I'm going to go through this and then I'm going to, my information will be in the chat box. If you want to get in touch with me to talk more about this, I'd love to talk to you about it. This is so exciting. We have been watching our chapters across the last couple of years, and we've noticed that several of our chapters were changing their names. And it was interesting to watch. Came up with some great names and some great logos, but we did see name changes. So we started thinking about this here in the national office, and we did a survey. And we asked our organizations to talk to us about what the extent of their services and supports were in their communities. And it was amazing to see how much our chapters had expanded the supports they were providing to families, to demographics of families, to different child and adult serving systems. It was just overwhelming to see the incredible expanse we've had in services across the country. And I think Michelle has put in the chat box also that survey, if you haven't seen it, it's very interesting. So we looked at that, and last July, this was a year ago, I took this information to our board, and we had a long, thoughtful discussion about the fact that our chapters were expanding their scope and focus, and we were not certain that the national office was reflecting that in our name. So we spent a lot of time talking about this. We decided that we would shorten our name to be just the National Federation of Families, to put that really strong emphasis on families. And because we know our children are always our children, we recognize and we applaud our chapters for their increased service expansion. I do want you to pay attention, please, to the tagline that we have. We're so excited about this. Bringing lived experience to family support. We believe that this truly reflects the work of our chapters, and we wanted to do that. Now, this does not change anything that we're doing in terms of children's mental health awareness. We will still be right on top of that. Our tagline for Children's Mental Health Matters will never go away. But it was important to us that we reflect the work of our chapters and the scope of our chapters. So because of that, we have made this slight name change. If you are one of our chapters, you will be receiving our new logo with our new name to add to your website. And we applaud our chapters for all of the work they're doing. Thank you so, so much. And we are so excited and honored to feel that we are better reflecting your work. Next slide, please. Now, here's the other announcement I want to make. Most of you probably already know this, but just in case you've missed it, the Federation was awarded SAMHSA's first Family Support Technical Assistance Center this fall. This is such an amazing honor. It is the first time that SAMHSA has funded a technical assistance center that is purely focused on family support. We have 4 amazing partners. And here's something that's exciting to know. The way that this technical assistance center is set up, we will be supporting families across the lifespan of their children, from birth to as long as families are supporting their children. we will be here to support those families and those organizations that are supporting those families. We also, our focus will be on both mental health challenges and substance use challenges. And we have partners who are incredible, but here's what's really exciting. These partners were selected because they represent professionals and families and other individuals with lived experience. We were determined that we would bring to this technical assistance center the most lived experience that we could find. And then once we did that, we decided that we had to bring Gail Cormier on as our project director because there was just no other way to do this. So please reach out to Gail. Her information is being put in the chat box. We are anticipating our soft launch will be in January. And then we're going to be setting up focus groups. We're going to be doing a very thorough needs assessment. We want to know what your communities need. So stand by. You will see updates in our newsletter. You'll get a variety of different updates, but please stand by. We can't do this without you. Next slide, please. So now I get to introduce our plenary panel. These folks are some of our chapters who are doing just some incredibly unique work, particularly during this pandemic time. And these are chapters that have, if you notice, they were selected because they are in diverse locations in the country. We wanted some urban influence. We wanted some rural influence. We wanted to know how our chapters are supporting families during this pandemic. So I will first introduce Sandy Bumpus. Sandy is the executive director from the Oregon Family Support Network. Rikki Harris is our CEO from Tennessee Voices. Susan Nyamora, who we're thrilled is with us because we were afraid she was going to be flooded out, is our CEO from South Florida Wellness Network. And Euphemia Strauchn is our CEO from Families on the Move of New York City. So with that, I will turn this over to Sandy Bumpus.
Great, thank you, Lynda. I am really excited to be here and to see so many people as part of this national virtual conference. That's very exciting. And I also just want to take you through on a quick journey with Oregon Family Support Network. Like, let's see, does somebody have the slides pulled up or am I? There we go. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Like many of you, we're a family-run organization. That's why we're here. We're here to support parents and our caregivers who are raising kids with significant mental health challenges. And because of that, we really know what the issues, challenges, struggles, strengths, all of the wonderful celebrations and accomplishments our families make throughout the time that we're involved with them. So go ahead and next slide. And our mission and vision are really what drives us on. We do this in a number of different ways. I think there are 4 core things that we do to support families and achieve our mission and vision. First of all, we provide support, whether that be one-on-one peer-delivered services or the support groups or other groups that we offer families. And then also we offer training and education. So education, support education, advocacy is the third thing that we offer. So we really want it, because we're a statewide organization, we want to be sure that families are able to advocate for their own needs, but also involved in the policy arena, advising around policy and programs that are being for children and families. Next slide. And the whole reason why we do this is because we want to empower families. I mean, that really is the outcome. you know, when we know we're successful in our work, when families are able to advocate for themselves successfully and actually do make that difference in the system. And we know that that's happening here in Oregon. But in terms of COVID-19, you know, a very interesting conversation. None of us thought we would be having this discussion a year ago. And what we have found as an organization is we have had to really pivot and adjust what we were doing in a number of different ways to be able to meet the needs. First of all, we wanted all of our funders to know that we're still here, that we're here to support families in whatever way we can. And so we, you know, approached each of our funders and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be taking all of our services online. We're going to continue to provide the strong support and advocacy we do for families, and continue to, you know, educate and give them advocacy opportunities as well, using those online opportunities to do that. In terms of staffing, as you all know, we had to be more flexible. We, you know, have a lot of parents who work for us who all of a sudden their kids were attending online school. For a while, they, you know, while the state was trying to figure out what they were going to do with school, they were, you know, they were home with their kids, and obviously there was no daycare options available for staff. So we had to be really flexible and allow them to work at times that actually gave them more flexibility in terms of the things that they're responsible for in their own family. We also stayed on top of mandates that were delivered at the federal and state levels around COVID-19, including the leave laws that were, you know, the paid leave and other provisions that were put in place. In addition to that, the state COVID-19 mandates around social distancing, how communities were going to open and when that was going to happen and that sort of thing. And then our services, as I mentioned, we brought all of our services online, and that was a bit of a transition, but we managed to do that successfully and continue to do that. I will have to say some of the flexibility that we asked for from our funders was to allow us to be able to serve some of the needs that families had due to COVID-19 as well. And we were very fortunate that they were very happy that we were just continuing to do this work and said, yes, absolutely, of course. So we were able to get some flexibility there as well. And then of course, trainings. We have a pretty robust training program and we moved everything online. Most of that was pretty easy to do, but we did have, you know, to work with some of our, some of the trainings that we do are actually national trainings. We had to work to actually get that approval to bring those trainings online. Next slide. And again, this is just another description of what I just shared. But I think what I really want to say more than anything is we had to be proactive. We really didn't have a chance to breathe while we were making this shift. We just had to do it. And we talk a lot at OFSN about being nimble. And to us, that means just, you know, trying to figure out how, you know, what the needs are going to be and how we're going to meet them and how do we make an adjustment that we need to do in the time frame that we need to do it. And then being alert and attentive to other things that are happening. As most of you know, we had a very serious season of wildfires in Oregon. And again, that brought about more stress and upheaval for families in our communities. Next slide. And again, I think one of the most important things about all of our organizations is that we have a way for people to find us. And so at OFSN, we have two websites. One is our OFSN website. And then about a year ago, we launched a new initiative, which I really want to share more about with you today, which is called Reach Out Oregon. And with Reach Out Oregon, it was our goal. It was something we had envisioned for 2 or 3 years, long before we knew about COVID-19. We launched this initiative about a year ago. And the whole idea about Reach Out Oregon is we wanted to create a community of support for families around the state of Oregon that any family could access, regardless of their insurance, regardless of, you know, all those things that could become barriers for them over time. Next slide, please. So with that, I'd like to ask Nicole, if you would click on the Reach Out Oregon logo for me. Because I'm going to give you a tour of Reach Out Oregon. And while she's doing that, one thing I'm going to say is that, you know, we're creating a community of support for families, and we're trying to, through this initiative, we are actually working to create a number of different options for families to be able to reach us. It doesn't look like the logo. There we go. Perfect. There we go. So this is our Reach Out Oregon website. And as you can see at the very top, we do have a parent warm line. And that is a main feature that we have for families to reach us. Any family can call that number. Our warm line is open from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so it's just important to acknowledge we've been at this for about a year, so we're still kind of in startup mode. So we anticipate that those hours will expand over time. But some of the, again, in terms of looking at COVID-19 and how we've had to shift, one of the things that we were able to do is secure some COVID-19 emergency funds to expand the warm line to be 5 days a week. So with that, it really opened the door for us to provide more support for families. And in this website, there are a number of different things that are available to parents. First of all, is we scroll through the website, and Nicole, feel free to just click on anything here. You know, we want families to know, first of all, that they're not alone, that there are other families who experience, you know, some of the stigma, the trials and tribulations that we have as families. And we also have stories of hope and success to share with one another. So some of what families can do here is come and learn about our events and trainings that we have that are available. We have resources on the website that are based on communities around the state of Oregon, which we have 36 counties altogether. We have COVID-19 specific resources, and this is one of the first things we did when everything started shutting down, is we got to work immediately to start pulling these COVID-19 resources together for families. If you look at the, let's see, on the 3 lines at the top right, Nicole, if you want to click on that and go down to latest news, I just want to share what we've got here. This is a newer feature that we've included on the website, and what we're really trying to do is keep families informed about, you know, what's happening in Oregon. Our governor, Kate Brown, just 2 days ago or on Friday initiated a social pause that will begin tomorrow and will last for 2 weeks. And so initially there were 5 counties that were on a list where everybody's encouraged to kind of take a step back, spend more time at home, have fewer gatherings of more than 6 people, and really just to acknowledge that, you know, the crisis with COVID-19 is very real, and our numbers are increasing pretty rapidly here in Oregon. And along with that, there were some CDC Thanksgiving recommendations about, you know, how families can have a Thanksgiving celebration and mind those social distancing strategies as well. So we're doing these things to keep families connected to what's happening around the state, but also to give them some ideas about how to, you know, move through the holidays as they're coming up pretty quickly. If you click on that menu again at the top, Nicole, just one other place I want to take us to. If we go to discussion forum, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to really open up the door for families to communicate with each other and with us in a number of different ways. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there are a number of discussion forums that, you know, families have been engaged in. Some of these, they're all relevant to what families are going through right now throughout Oregon. And so this is a way that families can connect with one another. We also have found that Reach Out Oregon can be a pathway of support to families through other things that we're doing. As an example, we just recently received some funding from our state to offer the P parenting program and as an online support to parents, and that we have staff who will actually be able to support families through that. Then we're using the Warm Line as a vehicle for families to sign up for that. So we're finding that there are all kinds of opportunities like that. We are also engaging with our community partners, making sure that people know about us and that we're out here. I know I did a presentation several months ago with Lynda and others, and we were really struggling to get this initiative off the ground, and I'm happy to say that things are really moving forward in a much better way now, where things are going more smoothly, and we've served approximately 250 families in one way or another through this initiative in the last year. So with that, I think I don't want to take up more than my share of time. I think I will go ahead and open it up for questions. Okay. Let's see. Great option for families. Suzanne Hoffman, we have Oregon people in the house today, so thank you, Suzanne, sharing what an awesome resource this is for families. And then how do the community forums work, or the discussion forums work? They work pretty much the same way that most discussion forums work. If you've ever participated in one of those, you go in, you select a username, you enter your topic, and then other people respond. We do monitor these topics to make sure it's a safe experience for everybody. So, and I'm happy to answer more questions offline for folks if you want to know more about this. So thank you.
Sandy, you have a question about how many families on average are contacting you per day?
It's still relatively, I would say it's probably in the 2 to 5 families a day. However, we're also offering other opportunities for families to participate with Reach Out Oregon by offering an online community discussion each week. And those are attended by anywhere from, let's say, 8 to 20 families a week. So depending on what the topic is. So
great. All right, well, if you have more questions for Sandy, if you will add them into the chat box, or you can always reach out to her. We will keep moving. I've been watching Sandy develop this program for the last year, and I've become her biggest advocate. It is an amazing, amazing service to be providing to families, and we're hoping to see it replicated other places. So now we will go on to our second presenter. Rikki Harris is the CEO of Tennessee Voices, and Rikki covers a huge geographical area from the thriving downtown Nashville area over into the mountains where I grew up. So Rikki, we'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynda. And let me first just say to you, Lynda, and to your board, thank you for your amazing leadership and guidance and support. Thanks for taking those hour-long phone calls from me over the past year and just walking through some things as we made changes, much like you've described about the Federation. So I'll start there, maybe while we're getting to the slides. So Tennessee Voices, formerly known as Tennessee Voices for Children, also made a decision last year to change our name and get a new tagline and a new mission statement, new vision. And part of that grew out of some strategic planning that we were doing, and part of it grew out of some philanthropy. So I'm going to explain that, because there's some context in which the rest of my presentation will make sense if you understand that piece about it. But first, our new tagline, services from firsthand experiences, obviously something that we're very proud of. We're very proud to be a family-run organization, and we make that very well known in all of our marketing as our unique proposition. How we do our work is a little bit different, and it's because of peers, many of whom are on the call today. So shout out to some of my staff I see, Jen, Kim, Dee, Shirley, Allie. I saw you guys on there. So we also changed our mission and vision statement. Our vision is that we are providing hope for all generations. The all generations is the part where for children came off of our name, because as we talked through our planning and realized we've been serving adults since the beginning of our founding. We have been serving mamas and daddies, grandmas and grandpas, aunts, caregivers, the adults in the lives of children, but not only that, we had been serving transition age youth and young adults for quite some time. And so just recognizing that we had an array of services for adults that it wasn't being captured in our current name. Our new mission statement is to be a collaborative leader guiding mental health transformation. And to that end, there's nothing I believe more strongly in than collaboration in this work. I don't know, and I've said it many times, I don't know how to do the work without partnerships. It just, to me, it is not successful if you don't build those partnerships. So if you want to advance to the next slide, I'll kind of walk through a few more details about us. So today, we've grown a lot. I've been the CEO for 7 years. We're a 30-year-old organization. And prior to my leadership role, I was the development director. Now, I will tell you right away, I knew nothing about fundraising. I was trained in mental health. I'm a mom of a child with mental health needs, and I just believed that I could figure out how to fundraise. So that's kind of what we did. And that piece of this presentation becomes really important when we talk about fundraising, because fundraising had never become so vital than it did when we started to deal with COVID. So just briefly, I have a video here, and it's from our last year's fundraising gala. And I figured instead of me talking at you, I'll just let the video kind of explain what we do, and then we'll go from there. Uh-oh, we may not have sound. Do you all hear anything? Yes, thank you.
In the community and in life.
Perfect.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Tennessee Voices for Children provides both aggressive system advocacy and direct services to achieve its mission to advance the emotional and behavioral well-being of children, young adults, and families.
Tennessee Voices has grown into an extraordinary and very, very powerful organization, helping tens of thousands of families, changing the direction of the lives of those in those families who might have a mental health issue.
Our goal is to reach 155,000 families, to triple in size over the next coming years, and to do that annually.
It's our job at Tennessee Voices to teach families to advocate for themselves, and then we educate them on the resources available and teach them to help other people along their journey.
Thank you to all of you who are here tonight to help Tennessee Voices stay strong, to grow, and to be even stronger, and to reach even more of the children and families across this great state.
So my hope is that was helpful in explaining sort of a little bit about us, but what's more important is I want you to understand who you heard from. So first of all, our founder, Tipper Gore, was there with us and has been with us every year since we started this gala 5 years ago, and has really re-engaged with the organization on an advocacy and donor level. And you also saw some businessmen and women from the community who have no ties and sometimes difficulty understanding the system of mental health. And then you saw some entertainers from the music industry. If you're a Rascal Flatts fan, you saw Joe Don Rooney. You saw some peer support specialists in the video, some staff from the organization. And we just believe that not only do we need each other as partners in the mental health field, but we need each other as partners across the entire community. And for leaders and people involved in philanthropy, we have to bridge a gap and become partners and educate them on who we are and what we do and why. So we just really believe the family-run organization mission is amazing and important, and that the community and the state leaders should know about the organizations that do this work. So if you will advance to the next slide, please. So when we started looking at our transitions in March because of the COVID crisis, we took a lot of stock in where we had been and what we had built across the community and those partnerships to really think through not only what we needed to do to respond, but who we needed to help us respond. And when we did this, we looked at our internal responses and our external responses. And as Sandy shared, much like you all did in Oregon, we had to make a quick transition to telehealth, which for us, we were very fortunate to have been involved in prior system of care grants where we had already done telehealth work and we already had the technology to do that work. And so it was a quick transition. We looked at our internal communication strategies and what we needed to do to make sure our employees heard from us and to make sure that they knew what we needed from them. And then we needed to make sure we knew what they needed. We started initiating trainings. And it was just unbelievable to me how many training options there were so quickly. And so kudos to the Federation and the community at large for just stepping up and helping get us all sort of attuned to all things Zoom and every other platform that we've learned to use. We looked at our financial projections. We looked at what our potential losses could be, where we needed to be cautious and where we needed to make sure that we had dollars. And so this is where our prior philanthropy work really came into play. We had savings, we had money in the bank for a rainy day, and the rainy day had come. And so looking at now, how do we respond with these dollars? And luckily for us, and I feel extremely fortunate because I know I've heard from colleagues it's not the case across the states, but we didn't have any layoffs and we didn't have any cuts because of COVID. We were able to work with our partners, our grant partners who are amazing in the state of Tennessee to really kind of transition all of our work. And we felt so good about that and so fortunate about that. As a matter of fact, I saw some of our state folks on the call. Hi, Brenda. And so the other thing we really knew we had to do then was take care of our staff, take care of the people who were going to take care of the people. So we looked at all of those things that we needed to address, and then we looked at external things. And more than anything else, we were worried about our communities. We were worried about what was going to happen to kids when they're out of school for this amount of time. What's going to happen in our systems where kids may be home with an abusive person in the home. There were all these worries, thoughts, and concerns about what was going to happen to the community. So externally, we really took an approach to responding to COVID that was very outreach focused. And that really took us back to all these partnerships that we had developed outside of the mental health system, but in the community. Because we needed some champions. We needed some champions to help us reach out to the community and to communicate not only that we're here and that we'd like to help them and resources were available, but just those in the moment tips and things that people needed to hear. We knew that just like us, most people were watching the news constantly as things were evolving with COVID. And so we decided to work with a PR professional, and we had around 28 press releases that were released to the media in 6 months. And that resulted in a whole slew of next things that happened. So if you'll advance to the next slide, please. So 30 press releases, 32 appearances on local news across our entire state. We have 95 counties in Tennessee, and we have very different regions. From one end to the other, we have very different communities. And so we launched this campaign to reach those communities individually and specifically, just to help, number one, give quick tips and advice, ways that we could just help our community cope. So we talked about things like, okay, alcohol sales are up. At one point, they were saying they were up, 59%. So we were talking to people about other ways to cope with stress. We were talking to people who were recovering from an addiction and how they could cope without letting this be something that would cause them to struggle again. So we developed all these topics, but then another thing happened that wasn't just COVID. The next thing that happened was obviously we had all kinds of concerns about racial injustice. We had lots of opportunities to begin talking about this. And so we approached that. We had an opportunity to talk to the LGBTQ community during Pride Month in our state. So we had topics that were part of our appearances related to that. And ultimately, we also needed to reach the entire state, and we needed to make sure that the leaders of our state knew why mental health was so important. And so we're really proud of our partnerships inside and outside mental health. And as I wrap up this presentation, I want to leave you with this video from our governor, Governor Bill Lee.
Hey everybody, Governor Bill Lee here. I'd like to thank the staff and the donors who've generously given their time and their financial support to the important mission of Tennessee Voices. Because of their dedication to this organization, people across our state are receiving the care they need. Tennessee Voices advocates for Tennesseans by helping them receive mental health treatment, counseling for little or no cost. They even have an active hotline to connect those seeking help to available resources. Now, more than ever, providing Tennesseans with this support is vitally important.
So I'll end with that, but I will say sometimes it's important we as advocates say what's important, but it's even better when you can get your leadership of your state to say what's important. And we're so grateful for the partnership we have with our state. Thank you.
Rikki, thank you so much for that. I just am overwhelmed at the amazing job you've done, particularly in this time period. And it's so great to see that you have a governor who supports what you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Our next speaker is going to be Susan Nyamora. Susan is the CEO of South Florida Wellness Network, deep in South Florida. And we have been in touch all summer talking about the different things she's been working on and just the dynamics of things that are happening with her families. So we're going to turn this over to her. Susan, thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynda. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited to hear about all of the new things that are happening across our nation with families, most specifically, and the name change and just the direction of how that's going. As a person in long-term recovery myself and a family member of an adult child who is in recovery, that really makes my heart happy, because we serve a lot of adult children here in our network, and we're kind of positioned a little different and very unique compared to some of the organizations, because at South Florida Wellness Network, we actually have a Federation of Families, a Youth Move chapter, and we also serve adults here in our program. So we are basically a consumer-run program in Broward County, serving our residents here from substance use and mental health. So we are identified as a consumer voice. So I'm very excited to tell a little bit about what we've been doing, especially from a grassroots perspective with everything that has been going on. Not just with COVID, but with, also with the suicides and the overdoses that we've had to encounter, and a lot of the variations of disparities within our network that we have been experiencing. Fortunately, we happen to sit on a lot of various systems. Some of our big undertaking right now happen to be with juvenile justice, the school system, and child welfare. So we have been able to do a lot of work in that. And, with our first system of care grant that we did that sunsetted last year, showed a great amount of disparities, most specifically with the African American youth and Hispanic youth. So we had taken on a mission to really help those individuals access care, which means how do we reach those families that don't speak the language, that most oftentimes a language services aren't available in their language. We've had a 6 to 9 month waiting list to be able to serve individuals who do not speak English. So we have really taken a proactive stance, and our Federation of Families supervisor, Rachel Craig Dunn, who also is on this, also here today with us, she has done a tremendous job making sure that we had family support partners that spoke both Spanish and Creole to help with the underserved population that we get, most specifically in juvenile justice, because that is a huge problem for our families. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about here was really, how our network has responded to COVID. We happen to be a hotspot, and we have a lot of families that are being displaced and underserved directly related to that, because unfortunately, behavioral health care is not given the same type of services as regular health care, and many of our service providers have shut down, and the access to care has been very limited. So for the month of April, May, and June, we actually hosted over 450 online support groups for adults, youth, and families. Well over 100 of them were specifically targeted to reach families and youth. And we also operated 3 different support lines to make sure that we were running 7 days a week, basically from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday. So we have taken an extremely proactive stance, and some people will say, how do you do that with the network? We have over 45 people with lived experience, which means we have adult peer specialists, family support partners, and young adults who also provide this support to other young adults. So it's been an extremely busy time for us and very overwhelming for our staff. So we have also put in additional supports for our staff and have spoken to our managing entity, which is one of our largest funders here in Broward County, to actually offer extra support for the helpers. So how do you help your helpers? So we actually do a lot of wellness workshops and a lot of different support groups for our staff. And we also have other networks that we're working with across the state. We're actually part of the COVID response to our community. And we are actually able to refer people that do not have any form of health insurance to telehealth services for medication management, substance use treatment, mental health services, or any type of other emotional support, whether they have the ability to pay for it. The vast majority of our people that we serve are the underserved, We do not take health insurance as we are a non-clinical type of organization. We are all basically natural supports, and we provide a lot of different workshops. Our mission statement actually for Federation of Families is actually, we have a tagline actually, basically is engage, educate, and empower. So we do a lot of community outreach, and we're reaching out for those families that nobody is serving them. So we go into trailer parks, neighborhoods that people wouldn't frequent. We go to all of those places to make sure that we're telling people that there are people who love and care about them, and we want to make sure that they have the supports that they need. So during COVID, we were able to secure a couple of grants that allowed us to do food deliveries, rental assistance, purchase computers, and also internet services for those individuals to be able to do their telehealth sessions. I think oftentimes we forget that not everybody has the means and the access, and that was one of the biggest hurdles that we came across during the COVID epidemic, was the fact that people were secluded at home and didn't have access to basic things like laundry detergent or laundry mats, and how was hygiene going to be there. So we did kind of a needs assessment within our network and within the communities that we serve, and we started delivering PPP, which is the personal protective equipment, sanitizers, cleaning supplies, laundry detergent, and food, to make sure that people had their basic needs being met. So it's been an incredible journey. It's also fueled our passion, which is advocacy, because we've recognized that there is a lot more work that needs to be done. We sit on a couple initiatives for zero suicide prevention, and we also distribute naloxone to families to make sure that we can counteract a lot of the drug use that is going on, as our numbers are really, really high in our community, and we're really trying to save lives. And it's been a very daunting time down here in South Florida, and especially with everything that's going on with this election time and everything. We have a lot of people that are in a lot of emotional distress and feeling very overwhelmed. We do have another grant that's coming up to try and help families sustain their living environment, and to help with further rental assistance so we don't have as many families displaced. We recognize during this time, with the moratorium for evictions being lifted here in Broward, it's going to be even more challenging for a lot of our people in the community. So we've been able to secure additional funds to be able to help individuals. So right now we're doing a lot of street outreach. So we put on our jeans quite often, and we hit the streets, and we go out and we try and find those individuals that are underserved. And we educate the ones that may not recognize what is actually happening in our community, because the people in our community is actually suffering quite a bit. And sometimes when you're working up here in the penthouse, you don't always see what's going down here in the streets. And that's one of the things that our network really, really strives to make sure that we're doing. We have some amazing human beings that are continuously working to provide that hope, and making sure that people recognize that they are cared about. So here at South Florida Wellness Network, our next venture for the next quarter, because we can only do a couple months at a time, because every time we come up, there's something else going on, is making sure that our families will continue to have a roof over their head for the holidays, making sure that they have something to eat on their table, and making sure that the children are cared for, and that they have access to therapeutic services if necessary, and to make sure that the underserved and the Black and Brown communities are being paid attention to, because we need to make sure that we have services in multiple languages. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for your time and attention, and continue working with the amazing families that you're doing. And if there's anything that we can offer, I told Lynda we'd love to be able to send care packages out. We do that a lot for our families because we think it's important for people to reach out to one another. So thank you all very much for your time. And Lynda, thank you for inviting me today.
Susan, thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear about the work you do. Every time we talk, I become more inspired. So it's great. It's great to have you as a part of our Federation family. And thank you so very, very much for everything that you do. I'm sure when you have a second to scroll through the chat box, you will see that our audience is equally inspired by the work you're doing. So thank you. So let us move to our fourth and final plenary speaker. And this is going to be very exciting. Euphemia Strauchn is our CEO for Families on the Move of New York City. And Euphemia has had the experience of being in the epicenter of COVID-19. If those of you who remember, New York City had just a terrible, terrible crisis in the beginning. So I will turn this over to her and let her speak with you about the services that they've been providing and the work that they're doing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to first of all thank everyone for the fabulous work that they're doing with our families. It's so good to see and hear what capable hands our families are in. And it's also good to see how flexible and innovative peers can be when it comes to serving families and youth. If someone would have said to us what was going to be in store for us for 2020, we would have probably said, no way, this couldn't possibly happen. But it did happen. And what we have shown as peer support providers, each one of us, is our resiliency. The coronavirus brought in a time of uncertainty and fear, and justifiably so. And no one knew what to do initially because we hadn't really had an experience like this in maybe 100 years. People were told to shelter in place. We saw news clips of people falling down as they were walking, you know, and so it really was anxiety provoking. But in New York City, where we have such a diverse population, we were also dealing with the protests for Black Lives Matter, and the looting and the police brutality. And so in spite of all of this, we were still able to pull ourselves together and really work with the families and try to assure them that they would be okay. We would provide them the services that we needed to provide and that things would be moving, you know, preferably without a hitch. And I'm glad to say for the most part, that's how it was. So when we think about Families on the Move, our services are provided a little bit different than many of the communities that spoke today. Families on the Move services are provided through hospital-based programs. We're also co-located the hospital programs for children. We're located in the community residence programs. We're located in case management programs, and we're located in residential treatment. So there was a lot of partners that we had to come together with when we were confronted with providing services in a new way for families and youth. So when we think about the services we provide, we were pretty much in a good place in that the state facilities already had technology in place for their usual meetings that they conduct. And so with that, along with our staff being prepared with cell phones, laptop computers, iPads, and so on, we were able to really partner together to provide the families and youth the services they needed with their input. So we decided to choose safety first for our families, our youth, and our staff. It was in the early stages of COVID that our own staff, some members of our own staff were affected by COVID. And so prior to being notified to shut down, Families on the Move decided that we would think about our families, the families we serve, the youth we serve, and our staff, and immediately had staff work from home. We'd rather err on the side of caution. So once we did that, I have to commend my directors, my coordinators, my line staff, my support staff, my HR, my compliance department, because we all had to work together to make the shift. New policies had to be put in place that were changing regularly. We had to make sure we were in compliance with the regulations that were coming down in providing virtual services. The directors were on the ball. They were reaching out, the coordinators, the youth coordinator, the family advocate coordinators, the training director, the training coordinator, everyone just worked together so wonderfully. And I have to also acknowledge our accounting department because, you know, we had to apply for the funding. So once we had reassured the families that the services would continue, we had to make sure that they would be flexible. And this, you know, was a little difficult at first because you're used to telling families that they can't have, for example, distractions when they're in classes so that they can get the information. But just like we have to allow for flexibility for the families and youth we serve, we also had to allow for flexibility for our staff. So we managed to move through that. Our families participated in greater numbers than before. So the lesson we learned through providing the virtual services through Zoom, through webinars and trainings and so forth that we conducted was that people were more comfortable getting the services at home because usually our services are provided at campuses, you know, hospital-based settings and so on. So what we did to provide support and respond to stresses is that, you know, the staff contacted the families and youth. They provided the support groups and trainings weekly like they did. Support groups were provided daily for the young people, the youth. The youth coordinator did a great job, as did the family coordinators and directors. And with the families feeling assured that, you know, that they were being heard and that their needs were being met, it made things a lot comfortable for the families. So we provided resource information for food pantries because our staff identified that families had stresses related to insecurities, which included food, not being able to pay their bills, not to be able to pay rent, et cetera, and also to not be able to have clean clothing. So it was mentioned earlier also. So we provided gift cards so that if the family needed food, they could buy the food, or if they needed to do laundry, they could do laundry. So that helped families trust and develop better engagement with the services. We had a warm line. We offered virtual yoga classes. The families and youth had a place where they could vent to validate, and their feelings were validated. Strategies were developed for families who were now home with their children 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We also provided support to people who lived alone in some situations, and some people who also live with their animals, so that they did have an outlet when they couldn't go out into, you know, the public because of, you know, having to be self-quarantined at home. So we shifted to the virtual service. As I mentioned before, it was easy for us pretty much because we were co-located with agencies, but working from home, we had to come up with a different plan. So how are we going to get the referrals from the families and youth to stay engaged with them? How are we going to provide the services? So we were able to get the referrals from the different, agencies and state facilities and local businesses that we worked with. So together with our partners and input from families and youth, we were able to identify ways to continue service delivery during the pandemic. So as we shifted to providing the support services to families and youth, it was relatively a smooth transition for the youth, the family and youth peer support and training. You know, it was really that plain and simple, really literally meeting the families and youth where they were actually at virtually. So an example of that was we had a participant in one of the parenting classes who was a mail carrier, who had to work but still needed to get this class, and was able to participate in the class as she was on her route. And she contributed such valuable information to the class. And one would think that people couldn't concentrate, you know, if they had distractions from work, but that was not the case. We also had families who did classes in their bedroom because that's the only place that they could be away from the children and not be distracted. So when we look at the work that we had to do, we can see how across the board, not just with Families on the Move, how we had to be innovative and let go of the restrictions that we used to have when providing trainings and other classes. We didn't want to charge anyone for services because we are Medicaid billable during this time, and we still are not charging families for services, and we're not turning anyone away. We did, however, have a little challenge with how our internship program was going to work virtually because the sites in which they were located were not open because they were not considered essential workers. So our program director for that program had to be very creative. Her name is Tina Gibbs. She had to come up with ways in which she could still serve the interns. So in addition to that, our family and youth, they were able to still participate in admissions, intake meetings, morning round meetings, grand rounds, treatment team meetings, and discharge planning meetings. And one would think that we wouldn't be able to do that because it was virtual, but actually we had more participation virtually than when people used to come into the physical sites. So going back to the Young Adult Supported Education and Employment Internship Program, there were strategies that the director used to engage young people so that they could complete the program even though the program sites were closed. So they worked in virtual workforce development and financial planning trainings. They did research on career interests to see what it would take to really evolve into the career that they had seen for themselves. And they were going to present it to their group once completed. They also are working on a holiday group project for senior citizens that are in nursing homes and don't have anyone or who couldn't have visitors, to let them know that they're not alone and that someone is thinking about them and cares. We had weekly check-ins, and also we provided support through virtual luncheons in which we supplied the lunch where we could get together and interact with one another. And as we moved on, we looked at, the voice of families being empowered, especially in a time when we've been confronted with unpleasantries of racism that are no longer able to be, swept under the carpet or hidden under the covers. And I have to say that I'm really pleased with the state agencies in New York State, for the work that they're doing. They've held meetings and are really working from the top down. As we already know, in most places, trainings always happen from the bottom, but we know that you get more buy-in when it's from the top down. So when we looked at this, we look at how the families were going to have voices. So being located in community residence programs, case management programs, inpatient day treatment, clinics, case management, et cetera, types of programs, we have family voice and youth voice representation on grievance committees. They're filed through Families on the Move instead of going through the agency itself. So instead of, for example, Astor Case Management or the State Office of Mental Health or the Jewish Board getting any grievances or incident reviews, we get the information. We also help to have the families and youth complete surveys so that their voice can be heard. And what we found is that they're more comfortable when they come through the peer support side of it to express their concerns with, things that they're pleased with and things that they feel that can be enhanced. So we are able to ensure family voice and choice through those mechanisms. The Department of Health and Mental Hygiene held a really powerful Zoom webinar. And I say it was powerful because they were looking to address the issues of racism. And they looked at it from the systemic perspective and how science has also impacted the pathologizing of behaviors demonstrated by Blacks. And I thought it was wonderful because it was actually organized, and this actual presenter was Dr. Myla Harrison. And she talked about racism and what we need to do from the perspective of the DSM. She talked about dromomania, which was a diagnosis given to the enslaved or the human trafficked, that was associated with those who wanted to run away. She also talked about dysphasia ethiopica, which was the title given, the diagnosis given to lazy slaves. And she also talked about drapetomania, which was a diagnosis given to runaway slaves. Now, when we think about the behaviors that were given scientific titles to legitimize the treatment of Black people, it was really deep, because some of the ways that they said it could be cured was putting oil on the skin of an enslaved person and getting a leather strap and beating them, because the skin was sensitive, and this would take away all of these mental health challenges that were attributed to the enslaved. So as we move forward in our work in New York, we are mindful that there are layers of trauma that are experienced with the Black population, and that are inflicted by the very systems that are there to provide help and service to them. So while we have ongoing dialogues, webinars, conferences to address the systems that are based on racism practices, we know that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. So when we look at the work that needs to be done, we have to keep in consideration that it's not just what we see with the police and the horrific treatment that has been perpetrated against the Black population, male and female. We have to understand that there is historical trauma, societal trauma, and systemic trauma. And when you have layers upon layers of trauma, it gets really hard to trust people, and especially the people that's supposed to be there to serve and protect and to help you. So as Families on the Move, we advocate for family and youth voices to be heard loud and clear, that the outcomes will be demonstrated by having an equal voice in decisions made about oneself and family, program services and treatment when in the system and in society. This also requires transparency and accountability when we continue to advocate for, with, and on behalf of those we serve, from child welfare, the injustice system, the miseducation system, and so on. And when we think about what needs to happen, the time is now. So when we think about this, I'm once again thankful to each one of you for the work that you do, and that I'm going to challenge you all to be accountable to make sure that there is equity in service delivery, and that the pathologizing of behaviors is not the norm. And for example, if a Black person sees a police, most likely you're going to see everybody run and take off dispersed. And to some, that might be a sign that they might be guilty of something. But in actuality, it's one of the signs of trauma. And the fear that's going through the heart of that individual is that they're not going to make it alive if they're stopped by the police. So I challenge each one of you to continue the work that you're doing. And as we look and move forward, that we are innovative in solutions to bridging the gap and disparities of people of color. And that if it's to be, it's up to each one of us. We can't wait for the next person to do it. We have to be accountable and stand up. And each one of us here are great advocates. And I thank each one of you again. And I thank you also, Lynda, and those who organized this conference for the hard work that you're doing and for giving us this forum and opportunity to present what we do. Thank you.
Oh, Euphemia, thank you so much. Thank you for the great work you're doing. I know New York City has been challenging for many, many, many reasons for everyone's mental health. And we are so lucky that families have your organization to lean on for support. Nicole, if you could put up our slide for the break. We've had a wonderful panel here this morning or this afternoon. I hope everyone has enjoyed this. I am so excited about this particular panel because I think we had wonderful different solutions for what's happening and wonderful strategies that each of you can take back to your organization. So that's very exciting. And we're going to take a break here for just a minute. I do want you to know that Nicole is going to be putting in the chat box the links for our different sessions. And what we'd like for you to do is just take about 10 minutes, and we have some ideas here for you. Just take a mental health break, stop for a minute, and we'll be back with you in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much.